We have to start putting the hammer down on people that don't want to follow protocols and guidelines, because it's going to affect every single one of us.
Toronto and Peel are singled out as daily COVID-19 cases jump back up to nearly 200.
As long as there's no disruptions and, school shuts down for 2 weeks, as long as it goes smoothly, that's what we're hoping for.
Pencils, backpacks, and masks. A first day of school unlike any other.
They're very sobering numbers, and this is a very serious problem.
The mayor reveals Toronto's speeding problem by the numbers. I'm Chris Glover with the Toronto Street that saw nearly 13% of all tickets issued by the new automated speed cameras. One of those tickets, 90 kilometers an hour in a school zone.
Ontario is seeing the highest number of positive COVID-19 cases since July. The province reported 185 cases today and 190 yesterday. The average number of daily reported cases has increased by 40% in the past 2 weeks, with a new nerve-wracking curve emerging. Natalie Collada takes a look at how Ontario is now hitting the pause button.
In so doing, you become bound to each other.
It's supposed to be the happiest day of a couple's lives, the start of a brilliant future, or that's the hope. But one large wedding in Markham and Stouffville late last month is now being linked to 23 new cases of COVID-19. Today, Ontario's premier once again issued a plea.
I can't emphasize it enough that we can't have these big parties. We can't have the big weddings. I understand a lot of cultures have massive weddings. They're bringing families from all over the world. You just can't do it.
Today, Ontario saw the highest number of COVID-19 cases reported since July, 375 in the last 2 days. All of it leading to growing concern and now a pause on further reopening for 4 weeks.
We're not proceeding with any further extension of any measures, including any greater size of our social circles, any greater increases in number of people being able to go to sports events and those sorts of things, because we want to keep the community transmission very low.
And if it worsens,
there is no clear plan right now to go back to stage 2. That doesn't mean we wouldn't.
The risk, officials say, is just too high.
And if everybody starts to slide, then you end up with a second wave.
In Toronto, according to the mayor of the city's 968 COVID-19 cases in the last month, 65% were people under the age of 40, 50% were between 20 and 39 years old, and 15% were people under the age of 20. And while researchers study the virus, this epidemiologist warns there still could be more to learn.
There's studies that show that asymptomatic people who've had the virus and they've had a generally easy course of the virus are now showing long-term scarring in their lungs. I was speaking to a colleague of mine who's an emergency physician. She was saying that she's had patients in their 30s who are completely healthy and they go to intubate, and before they can even intubate them, the person has passed.
Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
While other reopenings are on hold, school was back in session for some students in the province today. Farah Morali joins us live tonight outside Glen Forest Secondary in Mississauga. And Farah, the question so many parents are asking, how did day one go?
Well, Marival, there was some nerves, there was some excitement. This is, of course, the day that students, parents, even teachers have been waiting for, really since mid-March, when schools across Ontario were shut down because of COVID-19. Here at Glen Forest, this is part of the Peel District School Board. This was one of the boards that actually allowed some of its students to return today for the first time. It's doing a staggered start. But as you can imagine, this was not your typical first day back after Labor Day. Today, the focus was on adjusting to the new normal because of COVID-19, both inside and outside the classroom.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Gone are the days of running in just before the buzzer. This is what walking into school looks like now.
Make sure you leave space between yourselves.
Lineups, physical distancing, and specific directions where to go.
Classes are on the first floor. There'll be teachers there to guide you.
For some at Cardinal Leger, it's not just COVID-19 measures they need to get used to. They're also starting high school for the first time.
I'm hoping that I'll be able to get my way around the school, learn my way around the school, and that I just have fun, even with the fact that we're dealing with a global pandemic.
Are you excited? Are you going to try? So you see they all are wearing masks now. I hope they can continue doing that.
From mandatory masks in classrooms to spacing, the big question on parents' minds is, will it all work?
Wonderful. Thank you.
As long as there's no disruptions and, school shuts down for 2 weeks, as long as it goes smoothly, that's what we're hoping for.
Our plan is comprehensive. It is nation leading.
Today, Education Minister Stephen Lecce once again defended the government's back-to-school plan, despite calls from some parents and educators for the province to mandate smaller class sizes to keep students at a safe distance from each other. The government said today it's delivered millions of masks, gloves, and other PPE to schools too.
We delivered over, and these are pretty staggering numbers, we've delivered over 37 million pieces of PPE to the school boards across the province.
Not enough, said the NDP today. It's still calling on the government to cap class sizes.
They aren't prioritizing our children, that somehow they're rolling the dice and hoping that it all goes well. It's clear, especially as these cases climb, that we need to be taking significant measures in our schools.
For parents who chose to bring their students back to the classroom today, all they can do now is hope for the best.
We've got to start somewhere, right? Small steps.
It's all new for everyone. I just hope that everybody can keep safe.
So, Maribel, we heard the Premier in that piece talking about these millions of pieces of PPE that were sent to different school boards. This morning we heard of at least one issue at a school here in Mississauga, actually, St. Joan of Arc Secondary School. The teachers there took issue with some of the masks that they were given, and some educators actually walked off the job this morning. The school board told us that these masks were medical grade, and those educators later returned to the job this morning. So a hiccup that we heard about this morning, as you would expect on the first day back, given all these new measures. And keep in mind, this is just day one of the staggered return. Some school boards and schools will see students returning to the classroom for the first time tomorrow and the days and weeks to come. Maribel.
Much more to unfold here. Thanks for this, Farah.
New speed cameras catch more than 22,000 people over the limit in Toronto.
That's a lot. No. That's a lot. The person behind the wheel should be behind the bar. Not behind the wheel.
That seems like a lot of tickets, but hopefully it will reduce and make things safer.
I'm Chris Glover. How one vehicle racked up 12 tickets in a month. That's coming up on CBC Toronto News at 6.
There are concerns tonight over the safety of those Cafe Tio patios after security camera footage showed a car plowing through one of the locations in Parkdale. The patios have popped up all over the city in an effort to help struggling restaurants and bars. Greg Ross has more now on the impact this incident could have on the program.
This security camera footage shows the moment a car plowed through a street-side patio on Queen West.
The driver seems to miss the barricade and come in driving, I don't know, looks like about 40 or 50 kilometers an hour, clear through, pushing all the debris up to the side here.
Jacob Wharton Shuckster owned Chanticleer Restaurant. Part of the patio was his.
Well, it's obviously terrifying. We're just happy that it happened at, 3:45 in the morning instead of at a different time.
Fortunately, the patio was empty.
I cannot imagine if our customers eating or dining here.
Masaru Ogasawara owns Gu Izakaya Restaurant, which also shares the patio. Most of his tables and chairs were destroyed in the crash. He says the patio has been a lifeline for his restaurant, which has been struggling because of the pandemic.
We want to survive this pandemic with this patio, but we are not sure we will rebuild this patio again or not. So customers and our staff's safety is our priority.
These Cafe Tio patios have been integral to the survival of many restaurants across the city, but an incident like this has to call into question the safety of them.
Really, these kinds of incidents have been very few and far between. In fact, this is, almost one of a kind.
But this incident was enough for the mayor to suggest the city rethink the Cafe Tio program.
We did this at a time when we knew the traffic levels were also diminished because of COVID-19. And obviously, I think the safety record has been good, but the safety record is something we're going to have to take a look at as we reconsider the question of whether we're going to do it again next year.
And if they are open again, many customers told us they would be back, but they would also be more aware.
I think going forward, it'll definitely be on my mind. It'll be something that I kind of like just watch out every single time like a car is passing by.
You got to support your community and your locals, businesses, or else, you know, they won't be around as any long, right?
Police say they have charged the driver of the car with careless driving and driving without a license. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A man is dead after a collision in Markham this morning. It happened near Woodbine and Steeles just before 10:30. York police say a car and a dump truck collided. They found the driver of the car without vital signs. He was pronounced dead a short time later. The driver of the dump truck was not injured. Police are still investigating what led to the collision. They're asking anyone who may have been in the area at the time to come forward. Toronto's new automated speed cameras have been in operation for a month, and they've been busy. A whopping 22,300 speeding tickets were issued. There are 50 cameras in Toronto, but one saw a big slice of the action, and that's where we find Chris Glover tonight.
Turns out we've got quite a problem here on Renforth Drive in Etobicoke. Nearly 13% of all of the tickets issued by the automated speed cameras across the city caught drivers right here. And this is sandwiched in between a high school to the north and an elementary school just to the south. The mayor is furious about it and blown away that one of the drivers was going 50 kilometers almost over the speed limit.
Who would drive in the city near two schools at 50 kilometers per hour above the limit?
They could have hurt someone, and there's no price tag on that, right?
So between July 6th and August 5th, across Toronto, these speed cameras issued 22,301 tickets. That's 700 speeding incidents a day. And most troubling to the mayor is all 50 of these speed cameras are in school zones.
One of the things that stands as a beacon of hope in that regard is something like automated speed enforcement, which allows us not to deploy highly trained police officers to be sitting in a car with a speed gun, but at the same time to have some of the benefits.
Toronto police were alongside the mayor today, reminding motorists that excessive speed is the leading cause of Toronto's most serious collisions.
Nothing does a better job of slowing someone down or ensuring that they make a full stop than getting a ticket.
There were 2,239 repeat offenders, but drivers in one vehicle really failed to get the message, receiving 12 speeding tickets at one intersection in Scarborough.
I can't say anything, just people are idiots. Nothing else you can, how you can explain it. The person behind the bar. 12
in 1 month.
That's a lot. No. That's a lot. No, it's too much. No. I don't know. I guess you should just stop driving.
Tickets from these cameras don't involve any demerit points, so they don't impact a person's driving record. So it's really just a fine. What does that tell you?
It's money for the coffers. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
The tickets are expensive. The camera on Renforth issued the most costly fine of more than $700. But the mayor says it's not about the money, it's about the safety.
For those who hate getting a ticket or who dislike automated speed enforcement cameras, I have a very simple message. Slow down and observe the speed limit, and you won't find them to be a problem for you.
So there are 2 cameras per ward, and more may be coming, but these ones are going to stay put throughout the fall, and the mayor says eventually they may be rotated to other problem areas.
All right, thank you, Chris. Lil real chilly, Colette, the last couple days. I want to know if I have to go and dig out those sweaters and light jackets and all that.
It is getting to be that time, Maribel. It really is. But something just seemed off, doesn't it, when we're talking about these temperatures? I mean, a seasonal high for this time of year, 22, 23 degrees. Yeah, we're kind of off the mark. Now, we're looking at the morning temperatures from this morning. We're talking about temperatures Kitchener at 13, but 14 to 16 degrees. Now, wait a minute, because I'm going to show you the current temperatures, and I want you to notice something. When I do that, the clouds go away, and they hardly changed, right? I mean, boy, our warm spot is St. Catharines at 17 degrees. We just barely could do anything. Some of the highs for the day were back close to midnight last night. That's the best we could do. A lot of cloud cover, obviously, and then those off and on showers, much of it kind of just to the north of the GTA, but scattered showers off and on. And we continue to have this pattern as we go into the overnight hours. Again, heavier stuff to the north of us, but still, we have some of this activity. It carries on through the overnight, and then as we go into tomorrow morning as well. So yes, getting the kids ready again tomorrow. We may have some wet conditions, but I want you to see something as we go into tomorrow afternoon. Much of it as it goes to the north of us, we may just clear out and get some sunny breaks by tomorrow afternoon. And because of that, we could see that temperature warm up just a little bit for us. How about that? Wouldn't that be nice if we could get 20, 21 degrees? We'll take a look at the weather pattern as we're going ahead into this week that's coming up.
A whole 21 degrees.
I know. We'll take that, though, won't we?
Yeah, we will. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Police are investigating an early morning shooting in Etobicoke that sent one person to hospital. Officers were called to 8th Street and Lakeshore Boulevard just after 4:30 for reports of occupants of two cars shooting at each other. Police say the cars fled at a high speed. A victim was found at the scene and taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Police found shell casings in several cars with bullet holes in the area. The city's latest murder victim is a man in his late 30s who police say had been living under a bridge. Investigators were back in the area where the body of Rampreet Singh was discovered Monday morning. Police say Singh, who also went by the name Peter, had obvious signs of trauma when he was found by a jogger. The area where he lived is right beside the Humber River. Police could be seen searching the water in that area again today. They also set up a command post in the hopes of getting more details about the timeline leading up to Singh's death. Police are asking anyone who may have been in the area near Highway 27 and Humber College Boulevard between midnight and 7 a.m. on Monday and heard or saw anything unusual to contact them. A ghost bike memorial ride was held this morning in remembrance of a 16-year-old cyclist struck and killed in Mississauga last week. Nicholas Ramdial was killed last Tuesday when he was cycling on Dixie and Blundell roads south of Dundas. Police say he was struck by a transport truck. Today's event was organized by advocates for safer streets for cyclists.
Every life matters to us. We see ourselves in every memorial that I put up. I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I think every memorial that I put up helps carry on the feeling of solidarity with cyclists. It's not just one cyclist that's riding the streets, we're all riding that same spot of street.
The driver of the truck that struck the teen remained on scene and is cooperating with police. There's no word on any charges at this time. Dozens of wildfires in California have burned a record-setting 800,000 hectares. Fires are also burning in Oregon and Washington state, sending smoke into southern British Columbia. That's heightening health concerns as officials continue to combat COVID-19. Briar Stewart has the latest.
Well, there's a gas station. They don't have any fuel left, though.
This is what Jake Thone had to drive through to escape the rapidly growing creek fire, which has burned nearly 600 square kilometers. Others trapped in California's Sierra National Forest had to be airlifted out by the state's National Guard. Conditions were so dangerous, the smoke so thick, that it hampered some of the rescue efforts, and officials believe there are more people still trapped in the backcountry.
They weren't able to land several attempts throughout the day.
The still out-of-control fire has destroyed dozens of buildings, and it's just one of several fires burning across the state. Officials warn that the ongoing wind and high temperatures could make things even worse. Further north in Washington state, more fires. 80% of the town of Malden burned, including the post office and Shannon Thornton's home.
Everything gone. Clothes, beds, everything.
Smoke from those fires has wafted into BC. It's settled over Metro Vancouver, but Victoria and the Okanagan are seeing the worst of it in this province. Air quality advisories are in place there, warning of a high health risk. And COVID-19 means the risk could be even greater.
Each is going to damage or compromise the airways and the immune system, and then it's like a second hit when the alternative exposure, whether it's wildfire smoke or COVID, comes along.
The smoke could linger for another couple of days as crews try to get all of the fires south of the border under control. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
While students head back to school every September, what they're packing in their backpacks this year looks a little different.
Wipes and extra masks. And don't forget your hand sanitizer.
We will bring you a list of must-have supplies after the break. Post-secondary students went back to class today, but many didn't set foot on a college or university campus. Tashana Reed shows us how some are adjusting to remote learning while still connecting with their classmates.
Casey Aruby is preparing for her first year of university as an industrial design student, except she won't be stepping foot on campus.
It's still stressful because it's like university and I'm excited and nervous. It's a whole new experience, so I don't want to mess anything up.
Her first year will be at home, learning and creating from afar. One concern, how it will all translate online.
I'm just hoping that I still get the same amount of information that I would in class.
Being online means missing out on another post-secondary experience.
I definitely would have preferred to have gone to a lecture in person. You know, I would have liked to meet new people, make some friends. Hey, what's up, man?
Kyle Archer, a first-year film and TV student, is making do at home, connecting with his new classmates using Zoom and group chats.
We help each other out when we have questions.
For thousands of post-secondary students, online learning will be the default this semester. The University of British Columbia has adapted 3,000 of its courses for remote learning. Some in-person classes will be allowed if virtual isn't practical.
We understand this is a different experience for our students. We want this to be over as much as they do. We are doing the very best we can to provide the very best education we can for them.
Fourth-year UBC student Gabriela Sunario got a taste of university life during the pandemic last semester and found some things were easier.
I am more confident in asking questions, giving answers, because I won't get that awkwardness or self-consciousness of people looking at me.
Still, this wasn't what she pictured heading into her final year.
There is nothing quite like the excitement of going to class back in September, to see the hallways and to see the roads on campus being filled out by students.
As for Ruby, she's trying to keep things in perspective.
It's better to keep people safe than to always have your way.
And looks forward to the day she'll be able to attend a lecture on campus in person. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
The back-to-school shopping list also looks a little different this year. Along with the pens, notebooks, and pencil cases come new must-haves. We sent our Ali Shiasan to find out what supplies students need in the middle of a pandemic.
New school year, new normal. Let's have the prep talk.
What you got in your backpack, guys? Pencil case, notebook, lunchbox, water bottle.
This year, you'll need to pack these things too.
Wipes and extra masks. And don't forget your hand sanitizer.
Clean hands are healthy hands, so a small bottle of hand sanitizer that you can pop into or hook onto your kid's backpack should do. A dime-sized squirt of hand sanitizer is good for a quick clean of the hands on or after riding the school bus, touching a surface they're unsure of, or adjusting their mask. Only when necessary. Masks have to stay clean to be effective. That means they need to be stored properly, so pack a clean bag or container. This can come in handy when the mask is taken off while eating or drinking. Disclaimer: once a used mask is in that bag, you cannot put any clean ones in it. It's contaminated. Keep them separate. As for how many masks you need to pack, experts recommend one to wear and at least one for backup, just in case.
Oh, did we break it? Uh-oh.
If it's a reusable mask, toss it in the wash right when they get home. Pack those things and that knowledge and practice pre-screening for symptoms. Your kids should be set up for a successful back-to-school transition.
So, is there anything specifically that you're going to be listening for in that debrief after the first day of school when the kids come home? What are you going to be asking them?
Oh, I'm going to be asking them a lot of questions. Biggest concern I have is around lunchtime and how they're going to conduct that, because that's the time when I've told my kids that they will have to remove their masks to eat. Are they going to be distanced? My kids know that 6 feet apart means 11 of their tiny little footsteps, right? So is that going to be the space that they're going to have? And I think that's the biggest one for me, because sanitizing, wiping their desk, we practice all of that all summer long. So the big one will be that and how comfortable their teacher makes them feel.
Back-to-school jitters aren't new, but this year can feel especially daunting for kids and parents. So as you prepare, keep on top of the latest health data and recommendations, and keep an open dialogue between you, your kid, and their school community. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
About 2 million students in Ontario will be going back to school over the next couple of weeks, ahead of a back-to-school season clouded in uncertainty. Well, we asked you to share your concerns, your challenges, and your worries. Nearly 750 of you responded to our questionnaire, and these were the top 5 concerns. Number 5. Poor ventilation and aging schools. One teacher with the Toronto Catholic Board said, "My school is 60 years old and has a boiler and radiators. The windows are locked and can only open 3 inches." Number 4, the bursting of social bubbles. A parent in York Region wrote us saying they are weighing, quote, "an impossible decision. Either we send our kid back to school and cut off contact with his grandparents, or we keep him home and cut off contact with his peers." Number 3, lack of information. A parent in Toronto was worried because we cannot see inside the school, meet any teachers. Number 2, mental health. A parent in Holton said they were worried, quote, "School will be a place that fosters anxiety, not learning." And by far, the number 1 concern, class sizes and physical distancing. An educator in the Trillium Lakelands board summed up their worry with a question. How can I keep 20 grade 1 students socially and physically distanced and safe in my classroom? Well, as the school year begins, we are keeping the questionnaire open. Share your concerns. Tell us about school conditions and how classes are going. Find it at cbc.ca/Toronto.
Ontario and Quebec are joining forces when it comes to economic recovery during the pandemic. The 2 premiers are meeting at this hotel tonight and tomorrow. Evangelina King in Mississauga. I'll have more on what they'll be discussing and what an economist says they should be focusing on. That's coming up.
Ontario and Quebec are joining forces to help get through this pandemic. Quebec Premier François Legault is in Ontario tonight to meet with Doug Ford about economic recovery. Our Angelina King joins us live outside the Hilton Hotel in Mississauga, where the meetings will take place. So, Angelina, what's on the agenda?
Well, Maribel, they're calling this a summit on economic recovery and health preparedness. Of course, all of this linked to COVID-19. So the two premiers met not too long ago inside the hotel for a very informal meeting. They'll have dinner tonight and then a series of meetings tomorrow, which will also include cabinet ministers. Now, they say that they'll be sharing lessons that each province learned during the pandemic, as well as trying to figure out the best way to recuperate. They say that includes working to break down barriers when it comes to international trade, as well as promoting products made here in Ontario as well as in Quebec. They also say that they'll be advocating for each province as well as each other's province when it comes to asking the federal government for more funding. Here's more from Premier Doug Ford earlier today.
We're going to have a great discussion. If you add up our population in Quebec, we're well over 60-some-odd% of the overall population, and we have a loud voice when it comes to dealing with the federal government.
I spoke with an economist who points out it's not at all unusual for these two premiers to be meeting. She did say that both provinces experienced some similar challenges during the pandemic, specifically those outbreaks in long-term care homes. And she also says that their approach to reopening is very similar. And so she hopes that there is something that can be learned between these two provinces sharing their experiences. Now, I asked her what needs to be addressed when it comes to a sustainable economic recovery, and she says that women in the workforce needs to be focused on, saying that women have lost more jobs than men and aren't recovering them as quickly.
If women don't get back into the workforce, we're going to see a continued economic downturn that is more prolonged and deeper than it needs to be. So to avoid that, you need to have two things in place. The first is a strategy for safe reopening of schools. That seems to be lacking in both provinces. You also need something to ensure that the capacity for childcare is not cratered by COVID itself.
So, of course, she and likely others are hoping those two things are on the agenda tomorrow. The meetings are scheduled for the morning, and the two premiers are expected to update the media in the afternoon. Maribel?
All right, we'll stay tuned for that. Thanks, Angelina. Unifor, the auto workers union, has chosen Ford to lead negotiations with Detroit's Big Three. The announcement comes ahead of a strike deadline later this month.
We have 6,300 members that work in the various Ford facilities. And the bottom line is the group that I think is the most vulnerable are our members in Oakville, and they deserve the right to determine their own fate. I personally feel comfortable that we can get a deal with Ford Motor Company, but we'll see.
Diaz says the Ford Edge, which is manufactured in Oakville, is set to roll off assembly lines in 2023 with no product replacement coming down the pipe. The union is pushing the automakers for commitments that new products will be made at Ontario plants, especially electric vehicles. A strike deadline has been set for September 21st. The TTC showing off the latest addition to its bus fleet today.
More than $65 million is being used to procure 60 battery electric buses. That will mean that Toronto will have the largest electric bus fleet in North America.
That was Federal Minister of Infrastructure and Communities Catherine McKenna on hand today with Mayor John Tory and other officials as the TTC rolled out its third new electric bus model, which is now in service on Morningside Avenue. The transit service already has two other electric bus models on the streets. In all, 35 e-buses are now in operation across Toronto. The TTC is testing the different models to see which performs best before making a decision to buy more. 25 more e-buses are scheduled to be in service by the end of this month. The Raptors are now one loss away from elimination after a brutal defeat by the Boston Celtics last night.
Just a combination of really bad play on our part, embarrassing effort sometimes, lack of shot making, lack of execution, And you add that to a team that if you let them feel good, they're really hard to stop. And so that's what you see.
Yeah, the Celtics pummeled the Raptors 111-89, taking a 3-2 lead in the best-of-7 Eastern Conference semifinals. It's win or go home for the Raps when they play Game 6 tomorrow, and they may have an added challenge. Serge Ibaka spent today in a boot after suffering a sprained ankle. It's unclear if he'll be able to play. If the Raptors pull out a win tomorrow, Game 7 goes ahead Friday. I know for you too, Colette, that was a tough one to watch last night.
It was painful. It was a little bit painful. But this is what I think. We have to stop framing it as we are one game away from being eliminated. We are 2 games away from moving forward into the next round.
Changing my outlook.
Yes.
That's what we're going with.
This is how we need to frame it, okay?
Done.
Let's go in that direction. I thought something that might also be interesting to look at here is, hey, let's go in this direction. Looking back at, and I know it depends on what school board and that we start on different days depending on each year, but looking back on the daytime high over the last several years for the first day of school and how they have changed or fluctuated. I mean, it is usually right at the beginning of September, and in 2016, that daytime high was around 31 degrees. If there's no air conditioning, that can be pretty warm in the classroom. 2017, 21 degrees, and I'm taking these numbers from Pearson, but 28 degrees in 2018, 23, and boy, oh boy, this doesn't fit, does it? Today, our high unofficially, but I mean around 16 degrees, about the best we could do. A little bit over that at times, but actually the high for the day was back towards midnight where you could round it up to 17, but for the afternoon, it was right around 16 degrees. So that's kind of an interesting comparison in terms of 2020, about half what it was around 5 years ago. And talking about temperature differentials, have a look at this. For Northern Ontario, some of these numbers, single digits with the current temperatures. You can see still, although it's cooler than yesterday where the warmth is for the lower Great Lakes, and that storm track really looking at the jet stream, that's still pulling the energy and all these systems and frontal boundaries, bringing the moisture through here along the Great Lakes. Most of it towards the upper Great Lakes here, where some of the heavier rain is, but we're still getting into some scattered showers, some heavier thunderstorms through earlier this morning and through yesterday that have moved through. But really what we're getting into is just some scattered showers, and that's kind of the situation through tonight and early tomorrow morning. By tomorrow afternoon, hoping we can break into some sunshine, some sunny breaks at least, which would push us to 21, and that will certainly beat that high from today, Miraval, and then hopefully seeing some decent numbers as we get through later on in this week.
Okay, I'll be hopeful for sun because you're hopeful for the Raptors.
I am. 2 more wins to get us through.
From advancing. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, 2 Toronto police officers were injured in a frightening incident on the Don Valley Parkway this afternoon. Just before 3 p.m., police got a call from a female motorist who said a man had rammed his car into hers and was following her on the parkway. Police say when officers arrived on scene, the man drove his vehicle into the police cruisers. He then got out of his car holding a machete. They managed to arrest him a short time later. The injuries to the officers are described as non-life-threatening. Police, though, are still investigating what led up to all of this. We told you earlier about Ontario's troubling new COVID-19 case numbers, leading to a pause in reopenings here. Well, a similar surge is happening in British Columbia, and just minutes ago, that province announced new closures.
Today, all nightclubs and all standalone banquet halls are ordered closed until further notice. In addition, liquor sales in all bars, pubs, and restaurants must cease at 10 p.m., and these venues must close at 11 p.m., unless they're providing full meal service, in which case the meal service can continue but not serve alcohol.
Dr. Bonnie Henry said as kids go back to school and adults go back to work, something has to give and a balance needs to be struck to limit the risk of exposure. Clearly, all Canadians must stay vigilant to keep the pandemic in check. As Ellen Morrow explains, we could be nearing a tipping point.
A busy long weekend brunch in Montreal. Little appetite for fear, even as COVID cases rise. Large indoor gatherings are fueling the increase, say experts, young people flouting the rules.
I'm getting more disappointed and pessimistic by the day as I see that more and more people are unwilling to do what's required.
And doing what's required, physical distancing and mask wearing, has seldom been more important, with cases creeping up. Back to school, colder weather pushing people inside, and pandemic fatigue, a troubling trifecta as summer fades.
It's still a fairly low number, but it is indicative that something's happening in the community. And if we don't do anything right now, it could get to the point of a much higher rate of spread.
81 cases have been linked to a karaoke night at this Quebec City bar, while police in Sherbrooke, Quebec, cracked down on 2 crowded bars there this weekend where patrons were not physically distancing. In Ontario, there have been at least 100 new cases every day for almost 2 weeks. British Columbia is on a precipice, warn authorities there, as case numbers grow. It's too soon to call it a second wave, says Raywat Dianandan, but it's a crucial moment.
It's going to get worse. The challenge here is to prevent it from getting really worse. This is in the hands of Canadians everywhere.
If cases continue to rise, doctors say Canadians should expect some targeted lockdowns in the months ahead.
Now we're kind of dancing with it. We might have to do a bit of a curtsy or spin move to bring things back down.
You struggled for every breath.
Erin Culver was hospitalized with COVID in March. The 38-year-old, still experiencing symptoms, has this plea.
People need to be more cautious than they are being. I think that there's some behavior that definitely is not going to benefit us as a country, us as a province, in terms of keeping the numbers lower.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
One person's trash is another person's art. We'll bring you to the newest art installation in the beach, made entirely of garbage and plastic left on the sand. That story coming up. Classes are starting back up again this week, and for many young people, that means more time in front of screens as schools ask students to spend hours online for virtual instruction. And that's raising new concerns around screen time and well-being, as well as access and digital equity. So here to weigh in on the new reality of back to school is our tech columnist, Ramona Pringle. Hi, Ramona.
Hello.
Okay, so does this change our previous concerns that we had around screen time?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's not like come COVID, the worries around the potentially negative effects of too much screen time went away. And yet we are dealing with this new reality where we do have to reframe some of those concerns a little bit, I think. We can't just say, is it good or is it bad screen time? Screens are tools. Zoom is a tool. And just like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. You know, a hammer can be thrown through a window and that's bad, but it can be used to build a house and that's good. Now, all ages, whether we're talking about kids, whether we're talking about university age students, even adults, too much time, you know, if you're spending all of your time exclusively on screen at the expense of other things, that's not healthy and it's not going to benefit anyone.
I know certainly as a parent and lots of my friends who are parents, we've really relaxed sort of being hard on our kids and not letting them on the screens in this last 6 months. But let's talk a little bit more about the challenges that now students might face, given that they might have to spend so much more time online.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the immediate concern around screen time is that it could lead to headaches or exhaustion or increased anxiety. You know, that's all tied to the notion of Zoom fatigue, which has now become such a phenomenon and is so well documented. But the idea that we burn out when we spend an entire day in back-to-back video calls, and young people are not immune from that. Now, one of the challenges that I find myself being extremely conscious of and concerned about for this coming year with school is just our ability to focus and students not being able to concentrate on a screen all day. And this is something where, you know, it needs to be taken into account as courses are being designed, because I think what happens is if a student is being asked to concentrate on a screen longer than they're able to, there's going to be a lot of instances where if that class isn't designed the right way to take that into account, they're going to tune out, they're going to zone out, and it's not their fault. They're not bad students. They're not goofing off. It's just another casualty of too much screen time.
And so speaking of that, what are you seeing in terms of the different types of models that schools are using to help set students up for success?
So I think there are some schools where they're essentially trying to recreate the in-person model. So it's Zoom or online classes all day. And the challenge here is that they're not the same. They're not interchangeable. And you need more breaks. That would probably be my best advice, is take more breaks than you were taking if you were in person in class. So that's one of the situations, one of the scenarios. And I understand that scenario. I understand the desire to try and maintain that semblance of normalcy, but it may not be what's best for learners. The other thing that we're seeing is situations where it's an entirely asynchronous response. And this is traditionally what you see in post-secondary institutions when you've seen online courses in the past. So there's no live sessions, and there's maybe benchmarks where assignments are due. You know, not every family has a laptop that they're able to devote exclusively to a student and their learning. If there's, if parents are streaming for work and maybe there's multiple kids, for everyone to have a device becomes a lot of devices that you need to have in a household. In an ideal situation where everyone had equal access, I think the hybrid model is best, because there's an aspect of flexibility that comes from asynchronous, but there's an aspect of community that's so important. And I think this year maybe even more important than ever, and being able to speak with your instructor or your teacher, your prof, being able to discuss what you're learning with your classmates, that's all so important as well, and such a big part of the student experience.
Some of these challenges that we haven't really quite seen in back-to-school situations in the past. I appreciate your insight on all of this, Ramona. Thank you.
showcasing a new installation using beach plastic that was found on the beach this summer. Plastic water bottles are supposed to be the globe in the water part of the globe, and then I have each continent covered with different bits of plastic found on the beach, different colors. Today we're also doing a beach cleanup, which I organize almost every Sunday through the summer. Starting actually the first week of spring, I start the cleanups. And yeah, we have about 4 or 5 groups of people going out already have some garbage pickers and buckets and gloves. They usually bring the garbage back and I sort it and weigh it.
We do live in the area and we use Woodbine Beach for swimming and walking all the time. And it's been disappointing to see the amount of litter accumulating this summer, so we wanted to come down and lend a hand, help to keep it clean.
More people definitely means more garbage. So starting in May and June, it was unbelievable the amount of garbage that was left behind. The top one would be cigarette butts. And it's actually against the law to smoke on the beach, but people still do it. I would say second would be lids, like bottle caps.
Great to see so many people enjoying the lake, but we also want everybody to just do their part, pitch in and help keep the beach clean so we can all enjoy it together.
Nice, and that's our show for you tonight. Have a great night, everyone.